Hello, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me on the Phoenix Rising podcast. This is so weird because I am recording this in the afternoon and I always record these in the morning normally. But today I just felt super motivated to knock this out and bring you guys so much education around female and male hormones and how to structure your training and your nutrition accordingly so that you get the maximum results for the effort that you're putting in. So we're going to dive into that. This is probably going to be more science and education than you ever wanted to know about your own body. But my intention is to help educate you so that you have an awareness of what's going on with your fitness, your nutrition, your mindset, so that you can learn to just kind of check in and stay in tune with how everything that you're doing comes together in order to hit your goals. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I hope that you are ready to really just dive in because that's what we're going to do. If you listen to all this and you're like, holy crap, like I need some help with figuring all this out, you know what to do. Head on over to ashleydrummonds.com and I would be happy to work with you as your coach in structuring your nutrition, your workouts, and your mindset programming with specific ways that it helps you hit your goals. So that link will be in the bio. And man, I'm such a nerd about this stuff. I get so excited about that. And every time I work with a new client and we're structuring nutrition and we're changing out their strength training program and working on the meditations and supplements and all that, and they actually start to see how it's affecting hormone levels and sleep levels and mood levels, I get so excited because I'm like, yes, see, now you know what's happening. You're not just like totally lost of like, why do I have brain fog today? Why didn't I sleep really great? How come last week I could lift this weight with no problem and this week I can't really lift it and it feels like 500 pounds? Well, you're not crazy. You're not going backwards and you're not a total failure in life. There's actual physiological reasons why some weeks you're able to perform at your highest and best and other weeks you can't. And with the education I'm about to share with you, you will be able to check in, pay attention, and start to work with your body so that your training and your nutrition is in alignment with what's going on physiologically. So one of the main reasons I started really studying and researching all this, and it's not one main reason, it's a series of years of a lot of reasons, is because so most of my life, I've been an athlete. I played a lot of sports. I love power sports. So I love gymnastics and I did softball and I did competitive cheerleading and weightlifting and all these things. And I've always loved it. I also grew up with two brothers and was really close with my dad. So I've just always been in an active environment. I always had male coaches too. I think I had one female coach, but that was about it. So from a young age, a lot of the ways that I was trained was not just from like a workout perspective and sports perspective, but also from a nutrition perspective were from the male structure. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem with that in regards to female hormones and male hormones, and trust me, we are going to dive into this with each individual gender. But part of the problem that was coming up with that is I would get really frustrated as an athlete. And this even carried over into my 20s. And then right around like 30, I was just like, you know what? This is ridiculous. Like there should be way more science behind this and understanding. Like clearly there's patterns that are going on. And as you know, with how I am with mindset stuff, like when I start to see patterns, I start to investigate because it's like, all right, if this is a pattern and it's cyclical, then it means that there's actually a cause, a root cause that's creating this. And if we can understand that, then we can work with it and help alleviate a lot of the things that cause us problems. But so in general, being a female athlete, and I even see this a lot with young girls. So I've worked with a lot of like high school girls who are athletes who have no clue on how to do nutrition, but then they have a lot of male coaches that aren't really sure either. And they're like, we don't know what to do. Half of our team has their period and they're all complaining and moody and they're not performing well in the sport. And half of these girls are showing up like, oh, I guess like I just won't exercise this week, or I just won't do my normal thing this week. And there's actual ways around this. And so a lot of the stuff that I'm sharing with you is more out of my own frustrations because not only in the weight loss and the fitness and the strength training and the personal training world, is there a lot of cookie cutter stuff, but there's also not a lot of education. So there's things with keto diets, intermittent fasting, paleo diets, high carb, low fat, moderate protein, but then there's high fat, high protein, low carb. And it's like, it doesn't work quite that simply. There's multiple reasons for this. So from a male perspective, depending on your body type, which we have ectomorphs, we have mesomorphs, we have endomorphs, depending on your natural body structure, you are going to need personalized workouts and nutrition that work with that. Not only that, it also depends on how your body responds to certain stimulus. Same thing with women. Men tend to do better on keto type diets for reasons based on how your hormones are structured. Women don't do as well on high fat, high protein, low carb diets. And it's also because of our hormone structure, because we have different times throughout the month that our body will literally use up our carbohydrate sources and fat sources, which there's a process that happens. It's called glucogenesis, where our hormone levels as females, it actually suppresses our body's ability to use and convert certain things like carbohydrates and fat for energy, because it has to reserve that in order to raise our hormone levels. So what happens is a lot of women end up following keto diets, or basically just high protein, high fat, low carb diets, and you experience weight loss. And this is where what happens in the fitness and wellness world is people may lose weight in the very beginning, but then they start having all these other health problems. So with women, they start having hormonal imbalances. They start having acne. They have mood swings. Their periods become irregular. Their training is poor because they don't have the energy. And I mean, for both men and women, it's remembering that your food is meant to fuel energy for what you need. If you're sedentary, you eat food that supports a sedentary lifestyle. If you are active, you need to have a nutrition that is in alignment to fuel that. So with women and the different cycle structures of high hormone, low hormone, and all of that, your body literally will switch the type of nutrients that it uses and it doesn't use to support the structures. With men, there's also certain nutrition that also affects your body's ability to produce enough testosterone. And a lot of the foods that will help with hormonal function are similar between both male and women. It's just, there's so many gaps in this. And especially, I'm trying to make sure I'm covering everything. If I'm stopping, it's because I have a whole bunch of notes in front of me that I want to make sure I share all of this. But especially in the weight loss and fitness world, there are so many programs out there that are just follow this 30-day program. Here, do this workout for 4 weeks and you'll experience all this. Don't do this, do that. And it's your body is so individual that you can't do that. You can't go put somebody who has the build of a marathon endurance runner on the same workout program as a mesomorph. Male or female, they're going to have very different results. One of them is going to have a really hard time because they have different structures of fast twitch, slow twitch muscle fibers. And one is going to have underdevelopment. One is going to develop it a lot faster. And it's the same thing with the nutrition. You can't just tell women and men to go do keto and intermittent fasting for weight loss, because while the keto may work great for a guy, for a woman, it's going to totally screw up her hormones and cause an increase in cortisol. So all of this really is just to further drive home that your body is very specific to you. If you are trying every program out there, more than likely it'll work temporarily and then it's not going to work anymore because it's not specific to you. So you have to start to get educated on your own personal needs. All right. So we're going to start a little bit with nutrition, and I'm going to try my best to give you education that doesn't make your head spin with so much science. So male and female, our hormone structures are almost identical for probably the first 2 weeks for most women in our cycles. So when it comes to training, when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to how we recover, our sleep, everything, we are very similar in that. However, from the female structure, right after that 2-week period, everything changes. So with women, and I've actually mentioned this the other day to a guy coach who was coaching a bunch of women. And one of the girls was complaining because she's like, I don't understand why I'm so tired. Like 2 weeks ago, I had no problem lifting this weight. And now this weight feels so heavy. And I like kind of popped in and I told him, I said, hey, FYI, I don't know if you know this because you're a guy, but you should ask her where she's at in her cycle, because if she's in the second luteal phase of her cycle, she literally is not going to be able to strength train to the same capacity because her nutrition biologically has changed so that her body is keeping her from being able to use her normal sources for energy for the reason that it's producing more progesterone and estrogen. But on top of that, because she's now producing more estrogen and progesterone is catabolic, which means it makes it a lot harder for muscle growth and repair. Plus it changes our hydration. And he kind of just looked at me and was like, I was like, no, really though, you should tell her that, because right now she's beating herself up trying to figure out why she can't perform to the same level she was performing 2 weeks ago. But it has nothing to do with her losing strength or muscle mass. It's just her hormone structures has changed. So there's that. So for men, I think every guy I meet, they're like, I want to build lean muscle. I want to be strong and lean. Okay. Every guy wants to be that. Here's the thing. Depending on your build and your muscle type, and of course, like your age too, there's going to be different ways that you have to train to do this. If you're a skinny guy, it's very hard for you to put weight on. The last thing you need to be doing is high reps, low weight, and long cardio sessions. That's not going to help you at all. At the same time, though, one of the misconceptions a lot of guys have about putting on lean muscle is they think doing cardio inhibits the ability for muscle growth, when in reality, the truth is when you do cardio right, it will actually help with your overall muscle growth because you're developing fast twitch muscle fiber. So there's different things, male and female. Your fast twitch muscle fibers are your explosive movements. It's your power movements. It's the short sprints. It's the quick explosive, but not long durations. It's the difference between if you look at the sprinters in the Olympics and then you look at the marathon runners in the Olympics. Marathon runners have slow twitch fibers. So think of a slow burn. So they're not really built for explosive movements. The way they train is totally different. Your sprinters have fast twitch. You notice though, your sprinters have way more muscle growth. They, however, do a ton of cardio too. It's just a different way of doing it. So for guys who are constantly wanting to put on lean muscle, but they refuse to do cardio, that is kind of a myth. It's learning how to structure. And typically when it comes to this type of cardio in both male and female, I structure a lot of this the same just because it's how I've always seen people get the fastest results, not just with building lean muscle, but like boosting fat loss, balancing out insulin sensitivity, reducing cortisol, things like that. It's 15 minutes or less, and it is explosive, and you are using moderate to heavy weight. So typically, like, you're not grabbing 5 and 10 pound dumbbells and then doing 150 reps of those. And I mean, you can, that's cardio, but that's not really what we're going for. We want to go with training fast twitch muscle fibers that are going to help with anabolic growth. So anabolic growth is literally how you build muscles. And by doing that, we have to train your fast twitch fibers. So I always get made fun of in the gym. And even now people are like, you're like a little cardio bunny. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, have you seen, like, you can say that, but have you seen how I do cardio? It's not like I'm on a treadmill or like an hour just sitting here walking on something, whatever. It's not like I'm out here doing like an hour of cardio. You see me like busting my ass for 10 minutes, usually with a heavy pair of dumbbells or a barbell or something like that, because I am training my fast twitch fibers. Same thing with men. When you do this, and every time I've ever written a training program for a guy and it has this structure to it, and I have them do their different lifting, then on the non-lifting days, I have them doing short 15, 20 minute explosive athletic conditioning circuits, they're like, I'm a little bit confused. Like, shouldn't I not be doing these conditioning circuits because it's going to burn out my muscles that I'm working hard to build? I'm like, no, actually what's going to happen is you're going to do this and you're going to find out, because you're learning to move maximum loads in short bursts. When we go to do your strength training and your heavy lifting, you're going to be a lot stronger with that. So that's one of the things with training, both men and women. Long cardio sessions is not going to be your best friend. And another thing to add to this too is, I've talked about this in other things, is stress is a good thing in moderation. So your body naturally produces cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone. Cortisol, when you wake up in the morning, the thing that wakes you up is cortisol. It raises, it gives you energy. It's what gets you going, gets you out of bed and starts your day. As your day goes on, the cortisol levels will naturally taper off, which is why later on in the day, you get more tired and you get more sleepy. When you exercise also releases cortisol. So there's a fine line, because sometimes when people are working on fat loss or weight loss, they think longer training and longer cardio is the key to fat loss and getting the results that they want. And as I just explained, with the fast twitch and the muscle growth and the anabolic growth and those fibers, that's not the truth. On top of that, when you're doing too much long cardio, it can actually increase your cortisol levels, which signals to the body to hold on to stored fat because it's not getting enough fuel. So there's a lot of things that go into this that are really important. And like every single person I work with, like there's so many questions I have to ask of like, how much are you training now? I want you to track every single thing you eat. Let me see your carbs, your protein, what your fat sources are, what your supplement sources are. How is your sleep? How is your mental health, your emotional health, your mood stability? How heavy are you lifting? Like there's so much that goes into it because every person is specific. So for men, because men are usually like, how can I naturally boost my testosterone? I want to, not just for building lean muscle, but just that's your predominant hormone is testosterone. Few scientific facts is testosterone levels typically peak around 30 minutes post-exercise. Now, the interesting thing about this is for females, it's a little bit shorter. For females, it tends to be about 15 minutes post-exercise. But so the way that you want to train for maximum testosterone boost, both men and women, and for all the women out there that are like, testosterone boost, I don't want to look like a man. Listen, you're not going to look like a man. If you want to be lean, strong, and fit, lifting is going to be the number one way to do that. And like I said, again, think about the way a sprinter looks. Sprinters lift weights. Women who you see that you're like, she looks great. Trust me, she's lifting heavy weights. Like that's just the way that you have to replace fatty tissue with lean muscle tissues. You have to lift. So number one, the way I always suggest everybody trains for maximum results is training with compound lifts over isolation. So compound lifts are going to be the lifts that recruit the most amount of muscles in one exercise. So think about things like squats, overhead press, deadlifts, even if you do normal moves without having a stabilized way of doing them. So if you normally sit and do a shoulder press, stand up and do the shoulder press instead. If you normally do a bent over row with stabilizing the hand and the knee on a bench, try and do a bent over row without any stabilization, just totally supporting yourself. So compound exercises recruit the most, which means it's going to require the most effort just to do one repetition, as opposed to something like, let's say a bicep curl. For example, bicep curls in isolation exercises aren't bad when you're working on weaknesses. It's just if your overall goal is you really want to build lean muscle, boost fat loss, balance out hormones, balance out cortisol and insulin sensitivity, compound lifts are going to be the way to do that. Squats in general, Squats are going to be the biggest thing that's going to boost testosterone, both for men and for women. And all you guys that are skipping leg days, what are you thinking? What are you doing? Like, you're doing yourself such a disservice. Those of you who are doing leg day and doing squats and going heavy on that, congratulations. I am so proud of you. The thing that you want to focus on, though, is really making sure that you're aiming for lower reps, higher sets. And then the key to this is minimizing your rest time in between. So a lot of guys, they go out there and they're doing like 5 sets of 3 reps, or even women do this sometimes too. And then they're standing around for 3 to 5 minutes before they do their next set. You are doing yourself a disservice by doing this. Maximum rest time typically that I have people go through is no more than 90 seconds, with your sweet spot being around 60 seconds. So you're aiming for a weight, and I can't give you specifics on this because, like I said, it really is going to depend on the person, your level of fitness, where you're at, if you're familiar with compound lifts, if you've never changed or done any kind of training with compound lifts. But you want to aim for something that's moderately heavy. Moderately heavy does not mean 2 to 3 reps. That is extremely heavy. Moderately heavy means that it's enough that when you start to get around the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, so 6 to 10 rep range, you literally could not do any more of that, but you're also not totally breaking your body trying to do those things. If you can do somewhere around like 15, 20 reps, the weight is way too light for what I'm talking about. So to kind of recap this, when it comes to training, you can structure this so that you do 3 to 4 days of heavy compound lifts, and it's going to depend on the exercises. So you're choosing exercises, like I said, remember, that are recruiting more muscle groups in order to perform them. Typically, I tell people that means you aren't really using machines. You can, but when you use machines, you tend to take away the stabilization that is required in these compound lifts. So even if it's the same exercise, again, going back to the example of a bent over row, instead of doing a low row on a cable machine, it's not bad. Try doing the low row with a dumbbell without anything to support you, so that you are recruiting more muscles in your core and legs and hamstring and upper traps and all these things just to hold yourself in stabilization. So you can do 3 to 4 days of workouts that are structured around heavy compound lifts. And then on your days off, you can do these intense not really high intensity, and I didn't want to say high impact, but you can do these intense, low endurance, but high quality conditioning workouts that are going to complement the compound lifts that you're doing. And there's different ways that you can go about doing this too, and I'm not going to really dive into that because it would really depend on what your goals are. So that's one of the biggest things is around your structuring your training, and this is just an overview of it. That's what you want to focus on. Compound lifts, you're resting 90 seconds or less in between, and then you're also incorporating conditioning strength circuits or strength metcons, which just stands for metabolic conditioning, that are going to help with overall muscle growth and boosting fat loss. Now, here's where it gets different. So for women, guys, you can do this every single week, all the time. You can keep training this way, swapping exercises out to make sure that your body is constantly adjusting and progressing. Women, not so much. And this is another reason I wanted to do this podcast. You can train that way for the first 2 weeks. Actually, it depends on your cycle. You can train that way for the first 2 weeks of your cycle when we are most physiologically alike with men. The last 2 weeks of your cycle, you're not going to be able to train that way. Your body will not allow you. And when you try to do it and you can't perform the same, it does not mean that you are regressing and going backwards and losing everything that you worked for. It means you have to change the training structure to work with your body. And the funny thing about this is if you actually do this right, what'll happen is so weeks 1 to 2, you're training just like this, but then weeks 3 to 4, you work with your body to train the way the hormones are fluctuating. Man, talking today. Then when it comes back around to that first week again, you're actually going to be stronger because you're working with it, with the highs and the lows and cortisol and adrenals and DHEA and all of that. So typically the best way you can do this, and now we're going to sorry guys, this is more for the women on this side. So if you train like I just structured for the men of you're doing the compound lifts, you're doing the conditioning circuits the first 1 to 2 weeks. Week number 3, you can still do your compound lifts, but now you're doing more low impact circuits. Then week 4, it's not necessarily a deload week, but in a sense it kind of is. And I normally with clients on this, I normally have them focus more on skill work, technique, form, recovery. Then when it comes back around to week 1 again, you are going to be so strong and so much faster and to be able to perform even better than you did the month before. But you have to structure your training around this. So here's some more things too. Both men and women. So like we talked about with cortisol, and cortisol being a good stress, but if you're working out, you want to make sure that you're working with it and that you don't go too long with elevated levels of cortisol. Yeah, no, that's right. Cortisol. Here's what happens if you do that. If you go long periods of time with high cortisol, men, you will lower your testosterone levels. Women, you will too. You'll also end up storing more body fat. So what happens with hormones and with the body is maybe I wrote an article on this. I think I did. Either that or I was just explaining it to a client this week. I don't remember. But basically what happens is when you consume food, nutrient-packed food, and this is why nutrition is so important, your body uses fatty acids in order to produce hormones. So you're consuming protein, you're consuming carbohydrates, and you're consuming healthy fats. It goes through your gut, assuming you have gut health, which is a whole other conversation. Your gut then sends all the nutrients that your body needs to adrenal glands. So your adrenal glands sit on top of your kidneys. Your adrenals are responsible for producing hormonal responses in the body. One of the things is DHEA. DHEA is what helps produce estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, cortisol, all these things. When you are not properly fueled with your nutrition and you have gone long periods of time with high cortisol, when your body would normally take the nutrients and release it to produce all the hormones that it needs, all of those nutrients get stolen from the hormones and is simply used to produce cortisol because you have kept your body in a high state of cortisol. This is why your nutrition is really important. So when it comes to your food, high fat, higher protein, and low carb tends to work better for men because you don't have the same hormonal fluctuations that women do. But even with that, it's not quite that simple because again, it's going to depend on you, your overall natural body shape, endomorph, ectomorph, mesomorph, and how you're training. For women, when we're in that second half of the cycle and we no longer are physiological the same as men, and like I was explaining earlier, we have a process that happens of glucogenesis that gets suppressed. So this is the natural way that your body uses carbs for glycogen sources. Again, this is a lot of science. So your glycogen is what produces energy to give you fuel for your workouts. This is why after your workout, you have to replenish those sources. And normally you have a post-workout protein, some BCAAs, and you have a carb source that's fast acting to immediately replenish it. So for women in the second half of your cycle, if you are having a harder time performing and you're not really recovering and you feel fatigued, you don't have the same strength, it is because your body has suppressed the glucogenesis process in order to elevate your hormone levels, which means for nutrition, keto doesn't work as well because the second half of your cycle, you actually will need more carbohydrates to fuel hormones and to fuel your energy source. So fun fact, and men, if you have a significant other, I'm sure you have experienced this. 10 days or so before a girl starts her period, what happens? She gets cranky, she gets moody, she's craving carbohydrates and sweets. This isn't all crazy talk. This is actually because of what I just explained to you. So I actually had this happen. A client had messaged me, said, hey, I'm noticing like I'm not a few days, like 7 days or so, 5-7 days for my period. I'm really irritable in the morning. I said, hey, you need to add more carbohydrates to your dinner and what you're eating because, and I explained glucogenesis. I said, do that and let me know if in the morning you feel less irritable and cranky. Sure enough, started eating more carbohydrates during the second half of the phase. It helped alleviate a lot of that irritability. It helps your body balance out hormones. Secondly, though, carbohydrates help balance out the neurotransmitters for serotonin as well for women. So again, men, if you have a significant other, she gets cranky or moody or lethargic and all these symptoms that everybody brushes off as PMS, there are actual ways to cope with that. PMS does not have to be something that's like, oh, it's just that PMS. No, there's actually ways you can structure your nutrition and your training to help with that. So ladies, when you have that, naturally, so here's the fun fact. The 10 days or so before you actually start a new menstrual cycle, your base metabolic rate, your metabolism increases by almost 10%. And your body is going to want more carbohydrates than normal, which is why you feel hungry all the time. If you listen and work with your body and give it good carbs and the right nutrition, what'll happen is not only will it help maintain normal mood levels with serotonin, it'll help with your sleep. It'll also help you though in your workouts and with your day-to-day energy levels as well. So there's that science for you too. Now, going back to the structure with workouts and wanting to really like maximize testosterone for muscle growth for both men and women, but also making sure that you're not doing too much to where your cortisol is just off the charts. They actually did a study on this. And this makes me so happy that like there's more and more research and studies coming out about this stuff. If you do your workout, and while testosterone kind of peaks about 30 minutes after a workout for men and about 15 minutes after a workout for women, if you meditate within 1 hour after your workout for somewhere around 10 to 15 minutes, you actually will help rebalance the cortisol levels so that it doesn't ruin the muscle growth ability, and you will help with recovering from central nervous system fatigue. So I've talked about that before, where basically when you do lift and you do a lot of workouts and constant strength training, if the body is just like totally wrecked, you can experience central nervous system fatigue, both from like nutrition and just recovery perspectives. But when you meditate after your workout, you help with the process of bringing everything back into balance. So not only is meditation really good just for like overall mindset and awareness, but it actually helps with hormone balance and muscle recovery. So meditation doesn't have to be anything crazy. It can be something very simple. So if you're in a gym, you do this workout, post-workout, you're like, all right, so I know testosterone's gonna peak about 30 minutes after, but that also means like my cortisol levels are super high. So to help with this for meditation, let me go find a stretch room or somewhere that I can stretch and let me focus on just bringing my heart rate down, bringing my stress down, and focusing on my breath. If you do that, your body is going to recover faster. Cortisol levels are going to go back down. Testosterone and other hormones that are really important for recovery and muscle growth are going to balance out as well. And then if you combine this with proper nutrition of getting post-workout BCAAs and protein to help with the muscle repair, you're going to see huge strength gains and huge benefits in your fat loss, in your workouts, and in just overall hormonal balance. Speaking of all of this, so with recovery, so BCAAs, I get asked this a lot about your BCAAs being the branched chain amino acids. Amino acids are the foundation of lean muscle tissue. Obviously for women, because of our hormones and because of just our natural physiological makeup, it is harder for us to put on lean muscle. It's not impossible. We just have to structure our nutrition and our workout programs around that. But for men too, so with BCAAs, There are three very key essential amino acids that I pretty much always look for when I'm buying BCAAs, other than like without going into nutrition. Make sure you're buying natural BCAAs. No aspartame, no sucralose, none of that crap, because that just screws up your glycemic response, which is your insulin. But so you have three BCAAs that are very important in muscle growth and muscle recovery. And these three BCAAs actually break through the blood-brain barrier, which pretty much all that means is it helps with the neurotransmitters that help create hormonal responses for muscle growth and recovery. And those three BCAAs are leucine, isoleucine, and valine. Most of these are going to be found in almost every amino acid product on the market. If it's not, then it's crap. But it should be in the protein powders you use as well. The reason it's so important is, like I said, is for women especially, if you don't get that post-workout protein shake, which, full transparency, 9 times out of 10, I don't. I normally eat within an hour of my post-workout, but I don't always get like that immediate protein, especially if I get busy. I always at least make sure I am sipping on BCAAs and I'm getting them post-workout, because at least the minimum you could do is at least get that, so that your muscles are getting the amino acids that it needs for muscle growth and recovery. On top of that, so getting into things with just hormones and nutrition for both men and women, when this is almost the same. So like I said in the beginning, when I was explaining with your DHEA and your adrenals, fatty acids are so important for hormonal health. You can take omega complexes, and there's a lot of really good ones out there. But I mean, the main sources of just good fats are the same for both genders. Eat your fatty fishes, eat your salmon, your avocado, your flax seeds, your nut butters, olive oils, your eggs. Whole eggs are great sources of really healthy fats. So, I mean, these are the same in things that should be regularly included in your nutrition to help with hormonal function. It's more so on the protein and the carbohydrate side between men and women where it's a little bit different. So this is one of the first things you want to make sure that you're getting plenty of that. Going back some, and I'm sorry if I'm all over the place. I'm not trying to be. It's just I have these notes here and I'm trying my best of how do I try and simplify this? And I will recap and bring it all together as best as I can. Going back to some of this though, and the part about meditation and mindset. So typically with clients, I have them meditate in the morning and meditate at night. This is from a psychological standpoint. So when your cortisol levels are highest in the morning, which is why I suggest spending 10 to 15 minutes just focusing on your breath work, getting your mind right, setting your intention for the day, and reducing the stress response in the body. Doing this post-workout is also going to produce the same benefits, and then doing it at night too. Aside from that though, I mean, this is how you connect with your intuition. This is how you connect with what's going on in your body from a spiritual perspective. This is how you get grounded and align with your chakras. So meditation, I love that there's so much science coming out about it, about how it helps with cortisol and training and anabolic growth and muscle repair. But it does so much more than that it can also help you just with your overall well-being and emotional health too, if you let it. So if you have no other reason to start meditating other than just you want to look awesome and outperforming your workouts, meditation is going to be the key to that. If you start doing this, the cool thing is I think it was an Instagram post. I made an Instagram post about this the other day about using your workouts as a form of meditation. When you learn how to do the mind, body, and breath connection, so everything is present, you will start to incorporate that by using it with each repetition in your workouts. So what happens is you actually are able to delay the cortisol response a little bit longer, which means your performance will actually go up. Part of the reason people have to take so many breaks and rest in their workout, other than the fact of your aerobic capacity output, is it's the heart is beating super fast, your stress hormones are just through the roof, that you have to get to the place of slowing your heart rate back down, slowing your breath back down, and reducing the cortisol. Where what's fun is I've actually done this. Like I typically track everything just to pay attention and to be more educated on my own body and my own workouts and what's going on. I do this with my life too. But I will do a workout and I will track it and be like, all right, it took me 12 minutes and 32 seconds to do this workout. And then 6 months later, I will do the workout again. And the only thing I will focus on, not the clock, not the music, nothing else. The only thing I will focus on is inhales and exhales. And it's funny that my workout time will be crazy faster. It'll be 60, 90 seconds, 2 minutes faster. And you're like, how does that even happen? And I told a friend about this and she was like, what do you think is making the biggest difference in like your performance increase? And I was like, 100% it's breath work, because I've learned how to control my breath, that I don't have to stop as many times. I can keep going because my cortisol levels are lower. So I always tell clients, one breath, one rep at a time. If that's the only thing you focus on with your mindset in your workouts, not only will your explosive movements with your strength be a lot greater, but your recovery will be greater, your hormone levels will be more balanced, and you're going to end up performing better than ever. This is also something you can use in your day-to-day life as well, too, is anytime you're under large amounts of stress. I actually meditate more, and there's always the excuse people say of like, I don't have time to meditate. I'm like, that's interesting, because actually, if that's really the reality of your life, you should be meditating more to keep your cortisol levels and your stress hormones lower so that you can keep a stabilized state of thought and a stabilized mood, and it's going to help increase better sleep quality. So if you can learn to do this post-workout for about 10 to 15 minutes, and literally you don't have to be a weirdo in the gym that's sitting there like legs crossed, eyes closed, and you're like repeating some mantra. You can just do it with your stretching. Just sit in a stretch position, and all you're doing is taking long, deep inhales and exhales, focusing on your body. Where is there tension? Can you breathe into that tension and release it? So that's the main thing that I wanted to just get across with how like meditation and mindset is not only important with your overall workouts and nutrition and hormonal balance, but it also can really help with stress levels as well too. So to kind of recap a lot of this and just to kind of bring it home, hopefully in a way that you can kind of like pack it up and take it with you, is to get the maximum amount of lean muscle growth that is in sync with your gender. Men, compound lifts. Do your workouts with 3 to 4 workouts that are compound lift focused with rest of 90 seconds or less. Women, you're going to do the same exact thing the first 2 weeks or so of your cycle. The days you're resting from your compound lifts, you can do short metabolic conditioning workouts to pair with your muscle growth. And I mean, there's so many of these you can do, and I post these all the time. Or if you're one of my clients, this is in your workout structure already, so don't worry about it. You're already doing it. Men, you can do this just ongoing, constantly switching up the exercises you're doing and their weight. Women, the second half of your cycle, you need to switch to more strength, normal strength in the second half and lower impact. And then the last week or so before, you need to focus on just skill work, recovery work, and allowing your body to just rest and basically ramp up for a whole other month of fun. When it comes to nutrition for both genders, men tend to do better on keto, not always, but most of the time they do. Again, it's going to depend on your actual body type, endomorph, ectomorph, mesomorph. Women, you could do keto for the first half. It's going to be a nightmare for you for the second half though, because your body will literally stop using those sources to give you energy. So with nutrition, I can't really give you a whole lot of specifics without looking at who you are and what your goals are and where you have maybe some inadequacies in macronutrients. Again, your proteins, your carbs, and your fats. So if you want specific help with your nutrition, then you need to set up a call with me and we'll go over that together. And I will literally make you track every single thing and every supplement and every mood and how your sleep is and everything, and be like, okay, so you felt like shit this day. Here's exactly why. So tomorrow you're going to eat these carbs. You're going to swap this out for these fats. And then with your workout, I want you structuring this and then doing these BCAAs. That's literally how specific it is. So that's a little bit of the nutrition. I'm sorry that I can't tell you more, but just because I can't. I have to know what's going on with you. But third, for both genders, meditate 10 to 15 minutes after your workouts, but also throughout the day, because the more you can keep your cortisol levels down, the better hormonal balance you are going to have. Longer workouts do not mean better results. Sometimes longer workouts mean worse results and actually delays your results. So keep that in mind as well. Like I said, with the BCAAs, the leucine, isoleucine, and valine are going to be the main sources of branched chain aminos that you should have that are going to help with recovery. There's a lot of things. It's so interesting because I've had so many consultations with people this week where they're talking to me about how they've gone and done these different cleanses or these different diets, and then they saw a doctor and they've been working with this trainer and all this stuff. And I asked just basic questions of well, have you been, this person that you're working with, have you been tracking these things and actually looking at the nutrients that you're getting and you're not getting? They're like, no. Okay. What about your workout structure with women, for example, with your menstrual cycle? Is that being accommodated? No. With men, I'm like, okay, let's talk about the loads in your lifts. What do the compound lifts look like? How many are you doing? How often are you doing? What's your recovery time? What's your rest time? What's your metabolic conditioning like? What about your nutrition? What are your fatty acids looking like? And what's your carbohydrates and BCAAs? Oh, I don't know. I went to bodybuilding.com and found a 4-week workout program and have been following that and eating what they said to eat. And it just makes me laugh because I'm like, what? That makes no sense. You are a personal individual that has a very different genetic makeup and is going to be needing very different things. You can't just go follow a cookie cutter plan. But even on top of that, here's the crazy thing. So a quick story, maybe. I say quick only so you don't stop listening and I want to keep you around. So I'm going to try and make it quick, but it might not be. So I actually, part of what got me into all this, besides the fact that I've always loved fitness and nutrition just because I've been athletic, is I was on birth control for, 4 years, maybe 4 years. And I got off of it because I didn't really like it. So obviously I got on birth control to prevent pregnancy, but the main reason they put me on birth control is because when I was younger and I was having issues with anxiety, and then my cycles were off because I was an athlete and all these things, they put me on it. And the weird thing about this, looking back, and actually when I posed the same question to other women, is I didn't know what was going on with my body then, but instead of doing my own education and working with somebody to help me become aware of what was going on, I just had some doctor, and I actually had some male doctor who has no clue of what I'm actually experiencing, prescribe me something, and then I go on it. We do this all the time though. It's not just me, but somewhere along the lines, I started kind of questioning this of this makes no sense. Why am I listening to somebody else tell me what's best for my body instead of somebody helping educate me on my body so that I can do what's best for it? And why am I listening to a dude who went to school but has never actually experienced any of these things himself? So I ended up getting off birth control and a lot of things started happening. I was having so long story short, a lot of women have issues with anxiety. Men do too, which is also, it can be a hormone imbalance. It can be a cortisol imbalance, which we just talked about. But so I was having issues with that, and everybody kept making it a psychological response of oh, she's just highly stressed and high maintenance and all these things. Anybody who knows me knows I'm not a high stress person and I'm not high maintenance. So they kept wanting to put me on all these things of anti-anxiety, antidepressants, try to change my lifestyle. And none of it was really making sense because I knew people who were high stressed and I definitely didn't fit that profile. So I went back to my OBGYN and I was talking to him and I'm like, look, this isn't really making any sense to me. I'm not going back on birth control. What's the other option? And it caused this disagreement between us. He's like, well, if it's a hormonal imbalance, the way you stop a hormonal imbalance is with birth control. It controls it. For those of you who don't know how hormone replacement therapy works, think about what it's called. Hormone replacement therapy. It literally replaces your hormones. It doesn't work in sync with them. It depletes your natural hormone levels and replaces it with something synthetic. You think this is doing you a favor. However, long term, it creates more problems than it solves. It eliminates your body's natural function. So anyways, so I explained it. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I don't care if that's your only solution. I'm not doing it. If the body is dysfunctioning, there's a reason for it to dysfunction. So keep that in mind. Anytime something is not working properly, there is a root cause to it, whether it's nutrition, whether it's gut health, whether it's workout, whether it's stress management, a nutrient deficiency. The body doesn't just go out of alignment. There is something that typically causes that. So I started researching all this stuff on my own, and I actually went to a natural doctor, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to a holistic doctor. And here's the weird thing about this too, is I have had consultations with people this week who have been seeing a holistic doctor or natural doctor. And even those doctors aren't asking these questions, which blows my mind. It's like, what are we doing? Like, what is everybody doing with their jobs? And I'm not discounting it, but it just made no sense. So I had started going to a natural doctor because I'm like, look, I train like an athlete. I eat really healthy, but I'm having these weird things going on. I don't know what's happening. All this stuff. And long story short, I was given so many supplements. I was given so many tests, and not one person had any clue about training and nutrition in relation to hormones, which is nuts to me. They thought I was like, God, I was like 28 and they were trying to tell me I was going to perimenopause because I didn't have a typical female's hormonal structure. I was like, there's no freaking way. So I started researching it more, and it's actually very common for female athletes that we have very different variances than the normal female structure. So I started learning about nutrition. I started playing around with my own nutrition. I started noticing the different changes in my performance, and like, oh, if I don't like the word manipulate, but like if I change carbohydrates, like this actually helps alleviate a lot of this. If I start taking magnesium, then I don't have any PMS, all these things. But then I started noticing it with male clients too, they were following all these different programs and doing all these like bodybuilding workouts, or following some trainer at the gym who wasn't really educated that in depth on nutrition and BCAAs and figuring out cortisol levels and stress hormones and fatty acids. And they weren't really getting the same results. And so I have two brothers. I have my dad. So I started studying that as well. And it was like, so my brother Michael, he doesn't joke, but he tells me whenever he does start working out, because he was an athlete too, both my brothers were, but I don't know, 7-8 years ago, I had written him a training program, and it was just 3 workouts a week, but it was based on compound lifts. And every now and then when he gets back into the gym and he starts training again, he's like, the best results I've ever gotten is that one program you wrote me like 5 years ago. And I'm like, well, yeah, it makes total sense, because you have a mesomorph body type. It's very easy for you to put on muscle mass and to lose weight or gain weight. You have this kind of build that needs a decent amount of complex carbohydrates and protein and fats, that you just needed compound lifts. That's it. You needed 3 workouts a week of compound lifts, because the other days he was doing cardio, doing tennis, playing tennis. And he gets results so fast. But even with that, it was like, if he does a bodybuilding style workout, it doesn't work well for him. He does not get the same results. But so with my brothers, and then with my dad, and like studying how male hormones work, it just blows my mind how little education there is out there, and how little people are encouraged to get educated on their own bodies. And instead, everybody's trying out what some doctor said, that, which again, I don't mean for this to sound like I'm dismissing doctors, but like even doctors, it's when it comes to nutrition and fitness, they are not educated and trained on how it works. So one of the best things you can do with all of this, even though when you first start to get into it and you're manipulating like carbohydrates and different types of supplements and like the days that you're doing lifting and the days that you're doing low impact and the days that you're meditating more and you're not meditating more, when you start to do it, it feels like a lot because it's the first time you're ever paying attention to your own body recovery, muscle growth, and doing things specific for you. Once you do it though, within like the first few weeks, you start to notice a huge difference. Like you can actually start to see and understand of, oh, I see what happened this day when I did my compound lifts. I spent 10 to 15 minutes stretching and meditating to reduce cortisol, and I had the right nutrition, the right amount of carbs and protein and fats and the BCAAs. And I recovered so well the next day. Like that week of workouts was fantastic. Like I actually see it now. And then you'll notice the weeks that you don't do that. And you're like, man, why do I feel a little bit off? Like I have some brain fog. I don't have consistent energy. I'm very up and down. My mood's a little unstable. My sleep is a little bit disrupted. I always first look at your nutrition, your recovery, and your mindset and emotional state. So with all of this, while it may feel like a lot, really, if you just take the time to get to know your body, you're going to help work with it in the most natural way so that as you go throughout your life, you have not just some cookie cutter program, but you have actual evidence in your own life of what works and what doesn't work and what is happening with your workouts and nutrition. You know, one of the main mistakes that I see people make is manipulating their calories in a way that it's not properly fueling the body for performance. And I mean, this can go a lot of ways other than just not having the sufficient fuel with your nutrition for the DHEA and the adrenals to produce the natural hormone balance. But it actually can put your body in two things. One, you can end up in starvation to where your body starts holding on to body fat because it's not getting the food that it needs. So it just stores it out of survival. Or you can actually put your body in a catabolic state so that you end up, and this happens to people a lot, where you're working out a lot. And I've heard people say like, I feel flat. A lot of times it's because the nutrition that you're eating is not supporting the muscle growth and the recovery and the workouts that your body needs. So your body goes into a catabolic state. A catabolic state is where your body will literally eat up your lean muscle tissue and break it down to pull the nutrients from it to give you energy. So that really sucks because that's when people are working out really hard in the gym, but they're not necessarily seeing the results, or they say things like, why do I feel flat? And I mean, some of this is hormonal structures too with women. When you feel flat and you're going through the part of your cycle where you do tend to shift water. So your progesterone, sorry guys, this is for females. Progesterone in women, it actually kind of makes it hard for you to build muscle. It helps with your natural cycle, but basically it breaks down muscle and it makes it harder for the muscle to recover. But that's part of the reason why women, the week or so before, they're like, I feel fat and I feel flat. Like I feel like I have no definition. It's because of the shift that happens with water, because of the hormone fluctuations, but also because progesterone, it makes it really hard for muscle recovery. But so guys, when you're training really hard and you feel like you've been training hard for a really long time, but you're not actually seeing any real muscle growth, or you feel like you feel strong, but you don't feel like you have that muscular development, normally that comes from the nutrition not being properly in sync with what you're doing in your workouts. And on top of that, going back to the stress hormones and the cortisol levels and the recovery and all that, it can have things to do with that. And it can also have to do with the way that you're training with compound lifts, metabolic circuits, or long endurance cardio. So welcome to Fitness and Nutrition 101. I know that that is a ton of information, but really start paying attention. Start paying attention to your body. Just like I always tell you with mindset stuff, to start paying attention to your life. You have your own patterns and cycles that you go through, and anything that seems like a pattern or cycle with your workouts and your nutrition and your mindset and your sleep, there is probably a root cause that is creating that. So become a student of your own body so that you can start to structure your workouts and your nutrition and training to work with it so that you can get the results that you really want. If you want some help with that, we're going to wrap this up. That is exactly what I do, and I love it. I get so excited when my clients see stuff. This happened this weekend. I was on a call, and she's going to know exactly who she is when I'm talking about it. I was on a call with her, and I've been having her track every single day. Like, tell me how your workouts are. Tell me how you feel with your mood. How is your sleep? How is your poop? How is your energy? How do you feel in the morning? How do you feel at night? And so she had sent me the screenshots every single day, and I'm over here like doing the math and figuring out where we're at. And I got so excited. I'm like, yeah, no. Okay. So let me explain to you what's happening. This is great. This is perfect. So here's what you're going to do now. You're going to eat more carbs on this day, less carbs on that day. You're going to start taking this supplement because it's going to help with this. So I love it. I love helping people really see results, but also I get so excited when you start to see and become more aware of your own life because it's very empowering. It gives you a sense of control back instead of constantly feeling like, all right, well, I guess nothing works, or you feel like a victim, or you just feel like you have bad genetics or something along those lines. Like, no, your genetics are perfect. It's learning how to pair your nutrition and your workouts with your genetics so that you actually can see your hard work pay off and work with you instead of against you. So if you want help with that, schedule a call with me. Go to ashleydrummons.com. We'll talk all about this and help you get to where you want to be. But I hope this podcast episode gave you a good breakdown and scientific explanation for some of the things that are going on. And while it may not have given you specific structure, I hope it at least helped you understand a little bit of how to move forward with your workout and why it's important with making sure you're fueling your body for that, for hormonal health, mental health, and physical health. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe. And yeah, we'll see what other nerdy scientific mindset fitness stuff I can come up with to help educate you and empower you on how to really create the life and the body that you want. I will see you in next week's episode on this Phoenix Rising podcast.